So I usually am not in a terrible hurry. Also, a lot of times I take a lot of time and tell you about my perspective of the trip. Well, I had 23 go this year, and 22, is that right? Did everybody show? I know Mr. Cleaver, I knew he would not be here, but I think we have 22. So that means I got to keep it short, and I've asked them to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes each, which I know robs you guys, but it gives them all a chance to let you know about the trip. We had a fantastic trip this year. I know every year I come back and I say this is one of the best trips ever, but every one is for a different reason. This year was definitely one of the best trips ever, and a lot of it was because so many of the kids were really affected. A lot of times we'll take 15 and 3 or 4 people will just have that wow, that experience of a lifetime. But this year it seemed like to me it was 12 or 14 people who just had that wow, spiritual awakening at all at the same time. And so for me, it was just a fantastic trip, and I appreciate every one of the kids. We go there, we work really hard, we work long hours, but we want to get the most bang for our buck. So I'm going to just turn it over to them. The kids are, not kids, because some are sponsors, but they've all volunteered to tell you a couple of minutes about all the different things that we do on the trip. So each one's going to tell you about a little different side of what we do. And then I've got some pictures that I want to show you while they're talking. So without any more to do, we'll go ahead and start our 2012 Dominican Republic Mission Trip presentation with Hannah Weaver.
All right, well, I'm talking about the VBS that we did for the children. Sorry, I'm sick. And we went to up in the mountain church, and there was at least 150 plus kids there in just this one tiny church building about the size of a house. Like a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom size house. And it's just packed full and so very hot and sweaty. But what we do for the kids there in the VBS is if we do puppet show for them, then we do crafts, and we play games, and then we give them a lesson. And then as they're walking out the door, we give them snacks, like little individual cracker snacks and a little bottle of juice or something like that. And it's just a wonderful experience for the kids because they get into it way more than American kids would get into a puppet show. It's amazing. I just love watching their eyes light up. Oh my goodness, it's a puppet show. They're doing this just for us. Oh, we love it. And then they start singing along, and they start clapping and dancing to the songs that we play, and you have to be there to understand it. It's wonderful.
Okay, I'm talking about the sports camps in Mao. It was my favorite out of all the trip because we were all spread out. We weren't all squeezed into a tiny little gym. And the kids were well behaved, unlike in other places where they fought over everything. The teenagers were really fun because you didn't really have to teach them anything. They just wanted to play the games. And I loved our living conditions at Mao as well.
I'm talking about the sports camps at Navarrete. Mao was my favorite camp, but Navarrete, we went there last year, and it was nice getting to see all the new faces, but then again, all the familiar ones, and how happy they were just to see us. And they were really well behaved, except for a few of them, but they were younger. The older kids are, like Rachel said, they just want to get into it. They'll pay attention to you. They'll do what you want, and it's just awesome.
Well, I get to talk about the food, and the food was something else. Everything tasted all that much fresher because all of it was homegrown and it was right there. It had a lot of different stuff I'd never even heard of before. Like yuca. It's kind of like potato. It's a little more dense though, and they mashed it just like mashed potatoes. It was really good. And they fixed things all different than we do here. Everything was a lot sweeter, and it was all really good. I enjoyed it after a hard day's work every day.
I want to say a couple things about Michel and Suheres Marte. Michel is our missionary. A lot of you guys actually know him, but What you don't know is that he has a wonderful wife standing right by his side. They are the most marvelous people I've ever met in my life. They are so open to letting us come down and visit them, and Michelle does so much to plan out the trip and make sure that we have something planned for every second of every day. And he does so much that we don't even realize on the trip. We just kind of take advantage of him, but he loves it. He loves us being there. And Sue Harris was our cook, so she's a really, really good cook, like Brayden said. But yeah, you guys should meet them whenever they come to visit.
I'm going to talk about Melchor and Cassie. Melchor is Michelle's brother, and Melchor and Cassie is his wife. They were with us throughout every day of the trip. They have 3 kids, Ella, Jacob, and Benji, and they shared their kids with us as well, and they were just so much fun. Melchor is somewhat of a handyman. He was always fixing things for us. He put a new headlight in the bus. He would go do water runs. When we would run out of water, we would tell him, and he would go to the store and make sure we had plenty of water. He also rigged up a shower at Mao because we had one shower for 30 plus people, and so he rigged up one outside with PVC pipe and glue in a matter of about 5 minutes, which was pretty amazing. He just had a really great personality, a bright smile, a great sense of humor, always willing to help us translate, and not afraid to correct our Spanish when we were wrong. They together are an amazing couple and a great example of working hard to show God's love. Cassie also helped translate a lot, especially at the VBS. She just kind of helped organize it and get everybody's attention. She sung songs with the kids to get them involved and active. She just has a really sweet personality. She drove the van a lot. We had a bus and then an 8-passenger or something like that van, and she would drive the van a lot. Melchor would drive the bus a lot in addition to Michelle. And Cassie she was a good example of a patient mother as well, and she was very patient with us. She was also really thoughtful. If we were sick, she would always volunteer to get us Gatorade, or when I didn't feel well, she took me and made me lay down and put a fan on me and brought me a bucket just in case, and went to the store and got Sprite. And she was just really, really loving and sweet. We really couldn't have done it without them, and I'm really glad that we all had the opportunity to meet them and know them. I also have a note on behalf of Chris Kleber to share. He couldn't be here. He teaches a Sunday school class at his church, but he wanted to share his thoughts, so here they are. Dear Seymour Christian Church family, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the mission trip to the Dominican Republic. God greatly blessed me and challenged me during the 10 days of our trip. The Christians we've worked with are very committed to Christ and have a tremendous love for their fellow citizens. I want to also share how much I was impressed by the chaperones and youth that belong to your church. The unity and love expressed by the entire team was awesome. Their love for Christ and for each other greatly impacted the people in the Dominican Republic. You should be very proud of them. I praise the Lord for the privilege of being a part of this mission trip. As Dan shared when we arrived back in Indianapolis, may the mission of serving Christ continue. In Christ's service, Chris Kleber. P.S. I certainly do not miss the Roosters. Ha. And that was because they woke us up about 5 a.m. every morning.
Well, I'm going to talk about group time. Group time was a time at the end of the day where we all got together and just talked about how our day went, and we sang songs together, and we just helped each other out at that time, and we honored people, where we would sit them in the middle of the group, and then we would say good things about them and then praise them or whatever. And then at the end of group time, we would all break up and then go to our individual houses and stuff. But if anybody needed help or had a problem that day, they would find a person in group time and stay out a little bit and just talk about their problem and have it solved that day.
Well, aside from the VBS and the sports camps, we had one work day in Navarrete at the church, and I think it was the Monday before we left. We were supposed to build a wall, repaint some things, and build a septic tank. Well, we didn't get the cement mixed or anything before we left, so most of us painted and they worked on the wall a bit. And it was fun because we had so much we were doing that some people couldn't find anything to do after they finished their job because everybody else was doing everything. It worked very well, and apparently the cement got there right after we left.
The beach day was very relaxing after all the hard days and just sitting and working with all the kids. And at the beach there was all kinds of people telling, oh, come, buy, give you good price, free look. Then we had a translator, oh, later. Then there you could get massages, go banana boating, go tubing. It was just very relaxing.
I'm going to talk about the church services. They're really similar to American church services. Like, they sing songs and then they have a sermon. But they sing like as many songs as they want. Like, here we do like 3 songs, but they sing like 6 or 7. And I was also blessed to take $500 down there to give to people. And there was a group of 22 pastors, I think, and they didn't have money to live on that month because they didn't rent out their facility. They had to use it, and I gave them the $500 that I had.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the 2 nights we had, and we met with the Dominican teens. One night we met in Michel's church, and there was a bunch of us. We played games, and we got closer to them, and then we had a Bible lesson. And then another night, it was one of the nights that was close to us leaving, and we had a dance party in the back of the church, and that was kind of fun because we were dancing with them and stuff. And then we watched a movie about the Holocaust and abortion, I think. I'm sure. It's all in Spanish, so. And then after that we had a meal, and I like that because we all got to connect and come closer to our Dominican family.
Okay, I'm going to talk about our prayer groups. I think before this trip, I really only knew about half the people. And I think now we're all just like a big family. And I think we grew especially close with our prayer groups. And I remember I had a group of 4, and it was really unexpected because the first night that we met, we talked about our day, and then we asked what needed to be prayed for. And after we were all done, we were all just crying, and it really showed me how prayer works and how it affects people. And I think it was just an awesome experience.
I'm going to talk about honor time. We had it during group time just about every night, and we'd sit someone in the middle of the circle and tell them what we liked about them. And then at the end, we'd have 2 people from our group pray over them. I really liked it because it brought the group closer together and gave everyone a chance to say what they liked about everyone and just open up.
I'm talking about the hosts and the houses we stayed in. When you first get there, I think you experience a little bit of culture shock. You get off the plane, you get out, and you start driving around, you see all these houses that are pretty much shacks. A lot of them are like cement blocks, and then they have tin roofs on them. And I think we had 3 groups that stayed around the church, a group that stayed in the church, 2 groups that stayed around Michel's house, and then a group in Michel's house. And our living conditions really varied. The groups that stayed around Michel's house had running water and beds, and it was a house, and they had nice living conditions. Whereas the ones that stayed around the church, some of them didn't have running water, And that was really tough at first, but you really learn to adapt because that's how those people live their everyday lives. I know my house, I think another house, didn't have a toilet. They had outhouses, but they lock the doors at night so nobody can get in. So they actually give us a bowl that we may or may not have used. But you really do appreciate what we have here because they don't have nearly even close as much as we have, but they take pride in what they do have. So it's really touching and life-changing.
All right, I'm going to talk about the family fun day that we had. And, you know, like here, you watch the kids play. It's all it really is you watch the kids play. But there, everybody got in it, no matter what game we were playing. Like, we played one tag game. It was, I think it was blob tag. I don't know. But even the adults got into that, and they cheated because they broke the blob up. But, I mean, you really don't think about how much they really watch you there. You always think they won't pay attention, but the moment we left, there were kids playing a game that we had been playing the most of the time we'd been there, and they didn't know what we were saying, but they just kept watching us for like 30 minutes. It's kind of creepy, actually. But it's great. It was so much fun being there. I got closer to a couple of the kids there because one of them got heat stroke, and we just went over there and sat with them. It was a great experience being down there, and I would go back in a heartbeat.
So I'm going to talk about bonding with the Dominicans down there. This is my 3rd year going, so we definitely got to go back to Navarrete, and we got to touch base with some of the families and friends that we met down there. And this is our first time going to Mao, and we definitely made a lot of new friends there. And it was really awesome. It's humbling just to meet those kids and knowing they have slim to nothing and they worship God with their everything, and we have everything down here, and some of us don't even sing at worship time, and it's humbling. And I very much encourage you guys to go if that's what God's calling you to do.
I'm going to talk about the growth. I've had people ask me what impact have we made. 6 years ago when Michelle and Ramon, who was the camp manager at the camp that time, decided that had always been a dream of theirs was to have sports camps. And Dan and I put together a program. 5 years ago was my first time. We had it at the camp. We had about 600 teenagers. They had to be over 12 to attend that camp because it was an overnight camp. We did that for 2 years, and then 3 years ago we split up and still did a week at the camp, and then we did our first time at Navarrete, which is Michelle's church. And at the church, or at the camp, the first time at Navarrete, we had about 250 kids. That's pushing it, but this year we had almost 380 kids at Navarrete alone. Everything from 3 and 4 year olds all the way up to 18 and 19-year-old boys and girls at the camp in Navarrete. And Mal was the same. But part of the thing is to be able to go across the whole northern part of of Dominican, of which the 22 churches are part of an association, and to help them spread the word of God. And through God's blessed us. I've seen the church in Navarrete go from the setting outside the very first year next door to the church with maybe 30 people to this year altogether. I figured that we touched over 1,000 kids and over another 500 to 600 adults for Christ. So it's the mission there is growing with God's help, as Noah said. Their love for Christ. Every time I sit there out in the open and watched the movie the other night, we watched Courageous out in the open, thinking, could be sitting in Seymour, Indiana, and we're sitting in Navarrete, Dominican, watching the same skies, the same stars, and the same God, worshiping Him. And what a wonderful, awesome experience that is.
Hi, I'm supposed to share about the ministers that we met there, and of course there's Michelle and Suhades, it's the missionaries that we support. Sometimes we think they just take our money and live easily down there, but Michelle can make a lot of money, do a lot of things because he's very, very talented. And he sacrifices to be a minister, and he's not satisfied with what they have. And they have a church in really the slum area of Navarrete, and because that's the people that need it most. And he's stepping out on faith, and they're going to try to rent a building in a busier part of Navarrete and try to start a second church there, which he wouldn't have to do, but he's doing it. He's sacrificing financially for that. There's also another minister there that was without a church for a while, and Michel shared part of his support and had this ministry come assist him in his ministry. And so he's very generous, and he gives some of his support to help others who are in desperate need. There's also another family, a minister named Alberto, who's at Mao, and he is a builder, and he can get a job at that, but not in the area he's at. The church they need him at, it's hard for him to find work. And he had actually got a bill up to $300 for food to feed his family, praying that God would help him somehow get the support he needed. And he was getting to the point where he was going to have to move to find a job and give up the church. And because of the support that many of you gave to help me and others go, we were able to share and take care of that food bill for him. And he promised he'd stay there, and he saw God answer his prayer. And he's going to stay there and continue that ministry. And there's also another guy there that I met one of my first mission trip about 6 years ago, Soki. And he had gotten away from the church the last couple of years that I've gone. I've been praying for him constantly. We come back this year. He married and had a baby and is back and very active in the church. And he didn't have much money, but he bought a used car and was using that as a taxi to take people back and forth to the big city and was making a living. And he only had it for like 3 or 4 weeks, and the transmission went out. And he had no way to pay for that, so he's really having a hard time supporting his family. And so we took some money getting down there to help. And so I asked Michelle, how can we spend it? He said, well, he could use the transmission. I said, well, how much is that going to take? He said, $200. Some of you guys that know, some of you know cars, no, that's not realistic, but they can buy used parts there, and then all the ministers get together, and they put it in for him. So they're very talented, and so we were able to help that family. I know we made a big difference in his life. And I just want to let you know, these kids do sacrifice. It's not a vacation, let me tell you. You do get away from things here at home, but it's not a vacation. It's very physically exhausting. Out of the 6 mission trips I went on, this is definitely, I talked to Don, the most physically exhausting one. Because we really didn't have any only downtime we have is when we were waiting to get picked up at any time. Sometimes that might be an hour, but they're going to be there at any time. I've never spent as much time on my feet for long hours and then sitting down on hard cement for long hours. And it's still a blessing, but it was hard physically. And even though the food is good, it's not our food. And it takes a while for your stomach to adjust. Mine still, and I talked to some others who are still trying to get their stomachs back to normal. And so the kids do sacrifice. And when they do the sports camps, let me tell you, it is not easy. They do a 10-minute rotation where they teach a skill. Or physically trying to teach skills. We did about 120 of those in 6 days. And 1 minute you're working with kids who are 16, 17, then 20, then 2 and 3 year olds that don't know your language. So really, they did do good. I want to tell you, it is a spiritual blessing to those we visit and encourages them. The preachers want to come because we get other people to come, like these family days and sports camp, and they witness to them. And then their churches grow and other people hear about Christ, and they have a thirst for their people, for Christ. And it spiritually affects these kids. As an elder, I can tell you that these kids do gain spiritually from their what happens. And so, and then also, there's one other thing I promised, and everybody's supposed to mention it, they can find time, they do need a church van. We had times when we had a bus that's supposed to sit about 20, I think we had about 50 in it. It looked like one of those old contests, how many people can get in a telephone booth is how many people you can get into a bus. And they really need that. Church service would start at 7:30, and at 7:30 they'd drop us off. Then they'd make 2 trips around town with the bus and a van, try to get everybody back, and we start about 8:30 or 9. So you can see how different. And then afterwards, he has to take everybody back in 2 or 3 trips. So they do need a van, and so just keep that in your prayers as well.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the boys' homes, a little bit more in depth where we stayed. When we were in Mao, we all stayed together in one church, all the guys in one room. It was hot and there was mosquitoes, but we did get mosquito nets, and somehow a lot of air mattresses appeared from Cassie. She came up with a lot of different air mattresses for us. So we set those up, and then everyone raced to get to sleep before Wayne. because once the snoring starts, there's no sleeping. Then we went to Navarrete, and we had 3 different groups. 5 of us stayed in the church. That spider was outside the church. 4 guys stayed in a house, and then Wayne and Noah stayed in a house directly across the street. It was very uncomfortable at first, but by the end of the 10 days, we basically weren't even paying attention to where we were staying anymore. We actually opted not to go to a hotel for the last 2 days and continued staying where we were at. You learn to realize there's so many comforts that we have that we actually don't need. We're incredibly spoiled. You stop thinking about all that extra. It's all just noise when you start working and really focusing on what you're doing. There is what we like to call Dominican alarm clock there. That is a rooster that can't tell time. It crows all night. Motorcycles, mufflers are optional, and they run all night long. And then the dogs that don't start fighting until the sun goes down. The one final thing, I am blessed to be deaf in one ear. So when all this goes on, I roll over on the good ear, and it blocks everything out. And I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and there's a dog barking. And I got up, and I went over the window to look, and I hear, "Jason." It was Dan. I turned around, he said, "Did that dog wake you up?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Finally, you woke up." He had been awake every night with the dogs, and I slept like a rock every night.
Well, I'm going to be talking about the girls' homes, and we all stayed in houses that, like, families went to the church, and they all had little kids, and they were just so loving. They just offered us everything. Like, some of us slept on beds, and we had, like, showers, and it was really nice. And all the families there were, I mean, I don't know, they just wanted to give us everything that they could. Like, it was a blessing that we were there helping them. And yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about bonding with each other. It was a shock to me about how close we all got with each other, because when we first went, there was like a group of 4 or 5 of us that always stayed together. But through prayer group and group time and the BBS and the sports camps, we got really close. And actually when we got back, we were talking about how many times that we were all going to hang out, and we were planning stuff like pool parties and eating out and movie nights. And we actually got to hang out Friday, and we all ate at B-Dubs. It was awesome. So, yeah.
That's all I've got for the kids part. That means I get a chance to talk, because it's only 20 after. Actually, Kyle, if you could put it up. I'll just switch to the first one, Rock. I had some pictures in case we had leftover time. There was Michel's garage. Let's hold on here for a second. There's Michel and his wife Suhadis, and a girl that was helping watch their kids because they're so busy taking care of us. And then Cassie and Machor are in that as well. The reason the back of the group is so tall is because they're standing on the barrels. The barrels arrived the day that we came home. So we again had to work without all the stuff that we'd sent for the sports camps and so forth. But God provides. If God sends you on a mission, you will have everything you need to complete the mission. So we learned to do without those things. The big thing we did miss the blessing of getting to put the 500 and some pair of shoes on kids' feet. And they'll still get the shoes, of course. They'll still get the shirts that we sent. It's just we won't get the blessing. But then I guess the Dominican pastors and families, they'll receive that blessing of getting to see the smiles on shoeless feet and now having a good pair of tennis shoes. So let's go through just a few things about how life is there, because that's one thing I realized we weren't going to be talking a whole lot about. We went 3 different times door to door, inviting people to church. A lot of times when an American group shows up, then that will really boost church attendance if they know we're there. So we'll get there an hour early and then go around and tell people, hey, we've got Bible school tonight. Or in this case, this neighborhood here, he was going to show Courageous on a basketball court. Last year when he came, our church provided Micho with a projector like we have here, and he takes it everywhere. They've got you can't count on electricity ever being on, so he's got a little generator that he can pull it up, and he hooks his laptop computer to the projector, and so you can have a movie anywhere you want it. And the one basketball court in this community, it's a community where a guy named Ignacio, a new pastor, is starting to start a new church. And he wanted to show Courageous on this, was it a Thursday night? I forget which night it was. But he had us go door to door to invite people, and a mob scene of people came because we went around and invited. But anyway, this boy here had 2 horses. It was almost dusk, so he was wanting to bring them into his property, but he had left them on the town's softball field so that they could feed themselves at the little softball field. And I thought, boy, I don't want to play ball there tomorrow. But yeah, we can go to the next one. But a lot of people, if they want to go somewhere, they walk. That's why the churches are so small, and it seems like the churches are always asking for support from America. But in a country where everybody walks, and a rich person might have a moped or a horse, the churches aren't going to be big, because just think how far we all travel to come to Seymour Christian. If we had to walk, we'd probably find a church closer. So the churches there stay small, but that's just the way it's always going to be. This was a spot where a little pipe come up out of the ground and then turned left, and there was an on-off valve. And I have no clue where that water was coming from. But all the kids, we were one morning getting ready for sports camp, and I forget who I said it to. I said, hey, take a picture of that. About 5 or 6 kids in a line with, looked like paint, what paint comes in, filling up the water for the day. And I told our kids, that's what that'd be one of your morning chores would be to go to the village's water spot and fill up and then take that home, and then that'd be the water you'd cook with or clean with or whatever. And then I think all I've got left is just a bunch of homes. And again, I feel sometimes like I'm exploiting them. If you want to just show these kind of like every 4 or 5 seconds. But truth be told, we wouldn't put a horse or a dog in a house like that. We'd push it over and we'd build it something nice. And it's not that there's ignorance down there, it's just that there's abject poverty. So, we go to a place where, that's a little store. You can see fresh meat hanging right beside the bananas. So you can, there's where you go grocery shop if you're there. And in a country without refrigerators, Mom shops every morning and goes and gets what she's going to make for lunch. That was another little store. So in a land of abject poverty, that's where you and I would live if we were born there. And one thing I know the team always learns, we have so much stuff. But as we were talking in our prayer groups together and as we were just visiting at times, we've got so much stuff. But a lot of us are so miserable. And yet they've got no stuff, but we talk to them and they're just so full of joy. And I think one thing I'd love for the kids to take out of the trip is, if your goal in life is to get a great job, have a lot of money, and then you'll be happy, that's not a plan that works. That's a plan to nowhere. Money and stuff does not make you happy. It's having a relationship with your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So that's one thing I think really just slams us when we get there. And so, of course, we go to be a blessing and to tell the Dominican people about Jesus and how he saves. But at the same time, I know Michel and their church down there are such a humongous blessing to us because they teach us lessons we just can't learn here. And the group this year really was changed. I want to thank you guys. We start the mission trip every year the first week of October. We start doing the fundraisers. A lot of you guys volunteer to help with the Oktoberfest booth. And we do fundraisers year-round. The guys write you letters and let you guys support over the top with making this an opportunity for the kids. So before they get a chance to say thank you, I want to say thank you guys for giving us permission to go, for giving us the financial support, the encouragement. For the parents and the relatives who are here, I want to thank you for trusting me with your kids. If I wasn't going, I don't know if when somebody said, hey, let's take your 14-year-old daughter to a foreign country for 2 weeks, I would have been very hesitant. It was easy because I've done it before and I knew what it was. So I know what you parents go through and the amount of faith and trust that you have. And for all of you guys who prayed for us while we were gone, I know the sheets were full. And I thank you for that. We really were daily. As we went through the slides, I had the blessing of going through 5,100 pictures the last 2 days. And just seeing over and over how God really did touch us and God really did affect us. You guys went really fast. That's why I've got so much time. Was there anything anybody didn't get a chance to say that they wanted to before I turn it over for questions? Or anybody want to add to the presentation?
I just want to emphasize on the prayer bit that we could feel your prayers over there because a lot of things were spared a moment just and even for the missionary to see if people show up or what would work out. And some of us got sick, but it was just like for a day or two, and it wasn't near as bad as it could have been. So we know that your prayers were with us. And Daniel came back in one piece. So that's another reason I know your prayers were with us.
One of the things Wayne said about the bus, they only have the bus when groups are there. When our groups, it's the size of it's probably, we call it about a 25, 30 passenger bus. It's about a 75 passenger bus for them. But they only have that when groups like us are in Navarrete or in Mal. So basically they have Michel's 8-passenger van. And that becomes a 12-passenger, a 14-passenger sometimes, maybe a 16-passenger. So if you can imagine how many trips it takes to go pick people up and take them back. And that's why, please keep in your prayers as we look toward getting them a 15-passenger van that would make such a blessing on the ministry there in Navarrete and all, because it definitely is something that they can use and help further the work of Michel and Christ in Navarrete, because it is you've got to walk some places, as Wayne said, it's either walk, maybe hitch a ride, and you're always taking people somewhere and dropping them off, or have a horse or something like that. And we're talking, it's quite a ways some of those people live from the churches. So please keep that in your prayers, that we can get the van, make a fruition with it, and get it to them, because I do know that it's such a blessing. One other thing with the barrels down there, your prayers was, we never even mentioned them until about, was it Tuesday or Wednesday? Somebody said, when are the barrels going to get here? We had, I guess we knew that God was going to take care. We did know that God was going to take care of everything we needed, and He did. And so, as Dan said, the big thing was we missed the blessing of being able to see the kids with the shirts and the shoes, etc. But I know the Dominican people will have a great time helping their young people put them on and wear them and everything. So it's all a blessing. I know that everything they do is to bless Christ, and it's through the work of our church with the churches in the Dominican that has made a lot of these things possible.
I just want to start off by saying that I started this great adventure knowing a total of one person on this team. And being from Brownstown, having a lot of friends from Seymour is somewhat frowned upon. But throughout the course of 10 days plus our fundraisers, I made a lot of amazing friends. You as a church should be very, very proud of your youth that you have. They are amazing leaders. They will do a great job of taking your place someday. Throughout our time together, I felt completely accepted. There was not a single time that I felt like, oh, I'm an outsider. Your adults, they're amazing leaders. I'd just like to thank you and thank all the teams here for being awesome witnesses for Christ and doing exactly what He wanted them to do.
I just want to say, first of all, I love the Roosters because they got us up at 6 every morning, and we worked until like after 12. Well, I didn't get to sleep till after 12 every night. And I remember the first day I hadn't slept in almost 24 hours, and we got home and we were so exhausted, and we're like, okay, it's time to take a shower, and there was no running water or electricity. So it was just really, I want to thank all you guys because it was just an eye-opener for 23 people, not only do you affect all the people down there, but you affected all us also. Thank you.
I'd like to say to Kelsey that I don't know if any Seymour athlete ever got hurt playing duck, duck, goose with 2-year-olds. I also like to thank Dan for all his work. He knows what he's doing, and it does make a difference in these kids' lives, and for you people supporting them, because I mean, what it costs, most of these kids didn't have to put much out of their own pocket because of other people's gifts. And to get off track, well, it's nice to see John Hamlin here. We had a lot of prayers for him, and I just want to warn you, don't hug him or pat him on the back. And so try to run, keep people not too close to him, because he's still very, very sore.
Anybody else have anything?
Throughout group time, we did bond with each other very well. We all got to know each other in about 3 days of the trip, and the rest of the trip we all just hang out together as one big group. And it was really cool noticing as Kelsey, she only knew one person, and now she knows all 23 of us, and we're all best friends. And when we got back to home, we all had that one day of rest where we just didn't want to do anything. And then in a 1 day's notice, we all got together at B-Dubs, and 20 out of 23 kids showed up with a 1 day notice. And that was pretty amazing, just knowing that we might all just stick as a group and still be friends after the trip.
I want to share 2 things. One is that there was a night where we went to the park and went to an event, and 3 of us were able to share our testimony, which was a really cool experience. And I know it was me, Tyler, and Chris Kleber that went up, and that we all had people that came up to us afterwards, and not just people in our group, but people from the Dominican. So that was really humbling experience and really cool opportunity. And also just want to say that we absolutely felt your prayers, because for 23 of us to be in cramped quarters most of the time, sharing a shower, having to wait in long lines for food after we've all worked very hard and sweat a lot and are hungry, just for all of us to be able to get along and not kill each other was a blessing in itself. So I just thank you guys, because God's power was definitely evident on this trip, and without it, none of this would have happened.
I do want to say something. I hear a lot about living conditions. We've lived in a lot better in past years that I've been, and I think that this trip actually was the best in living conditions, just because it was so, you actually experienced the life that they live. And it was amazing, because I know the one girl that I lived with, I think I got closer to her than anyone else, but it was just, we were all right there, and the families were so welcoming. They had barely anything, and yet they shared everything with us, and it was just an amazing experience. And I want to thank you for letting us go, because I know, at least for me, I would not have been able to go without you guys.
I just want to add one more thing about the hosts. As you know, they speak Spanish, and a lot of our hosts spoke no English. So it was really challenging. And when we first got there, it was like, oh my gosh, we don't speak English. And especially for me and Kia, because we didn't have a sponsor. So it was just like, how do we communicate? But really, there's more than just words that help you communicate. God's love is absolutely amazing when it comes to that. And we were truly blessed to have Dan, Keena, and Manda to help us translate. And it's just, if you get a chance to go. Don't worry about the bugs or the language. It's not as big of a deal as what it seems when you get down there. It's really about more than that, and I highly suggest taking the risk and going.
I would just like to say, though, she mentioned Dan and Keena, but no one really talks about Cassie, Melchor, Michelle, and Lene. They really helped you, get to the kids to understand what you're doing. I think I asked Lene over 100 questions about how to say stuff to them. So she finally just took pity on me and Evan and just stuck with our group.
Okay, we've just got a minute or two before we need to start getting ready for the next worship service. I do like to throw it out if anybody had questions, something that you're just dying to know that we did not cover in the program. Yes?
What is the exchange rate and how would we go about giving a gift to the people there if we'd like to do that?
Okay, she asked how could we get a gift there, and they use the Dominican peso instead of dollars. They give you about almost 40 for one. So you feel like a rich guy if you swap 20 bucks in and you're walking around with 800. Actually, I don't know if we covered this in the program. 8 of the people that you have in front of you here were given too much money. I charged $950 for the trip, and some were given $1,200, $1,300, $1,500. And I asked them not to keep that, of course, obviously. So we take it down, and I tell them God's going to tell you where. As for instance, I know Hannah had a couple $100 extra. And I said, you know what, God's going to tell you exactly where to spend that. And of course, He did. And some are in different areas. So we've helped quite a bit of families and churches. If they want to help more, I would just say probably just throw it in the offerings, I would guess, and just make sure it's down on the 4 line. And we'll make sure it gets to whatever need that they have that's greatest. As for instance, they were trying to fix stuff down there, and there's between 5 different preachers. They had about 4 tools, and they just kind of loaned them to each other. So Amanda, we went one day to a store, and we just bought a great big toolbox and loaded it with everything we thought they could ever possibly use. And I know Elizabeth gave some to. There were some pastors who had nothing. Wayne gave some to the one specific pastor. So we go down oftentimes with a little bit of gifts to bless in that way. Oh yeah, that'd probably just be the team that's interested in it because they're both on Wednesdays. Okay, any other questions? I probably should stop in about a minute. Should I stop sooner than a minute? Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to ask our team to go back and stand while they're doing the countdown. And if you've got another question or something you want to say to the kids, then please see them there. Thank you.